How many Candy Montgomery miniseries do we really need? Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. It's funny. I have been wanting to watch Love and Death, mainly because it's just Elizabeth Olsen, and David E Kelley was the producer. And I didn't really know what it was about until before I started, I looked at the synopsis. I'm like, oh, this is about Candy Montgomery. I'm like, that sounds familiar. Where have I heard that name before? It's because it's the Hulu series that Jessica Biel was also doing. It's about the same character, same situation. And I never got the chance to watch that. I wanted to. It's on my list of, there's so much stuff. You guys know that. I just haven't been able to watch it. And now I'm holding on watching that because I'm watching this one first because Elizabeth Olsen just called to me more. The show is called Love and Death. They released the first 3 episodes on HBO Max. This particular review is going to be a bit truncated for each episode, whereas should I continue on, which I plan to, I'm going to talk about each episode a little bit more in depth. But for these first 3, it's kind of going to be a gloss over as we sort of speed along for those 3 episodes. First 3 episodes are called The Huntress. Episode 2 is called Encounters, and episode 3 is called Stepping Stone. These episodes as a whole act as sort of a setup to the inciting incident that occurs. The inciting incident, for those who are not aware, is that Candy Montgomery killed her neighbor, one of her friends, Betty, who was the wife to a husband she was having an affair with. And so this is sort of, these first 3 episodes are sort of the build up to the point where that incident occurs. In the first episode, in this series, we get Elizabeth Olsen playing Candy Montgomery and Jessie Plemons playing Alan Gore. Not to be confused with Al Gore, which I know I'm going to trip up at some point in time and saying. And it takes place in the late 70s. 80 is when the incident happens, and then we go back 2 years. This series starts with us looking at sort of the street that they lived on and the sort of grisly murder scene that took place. We don't get to see much, but we get to see that something has occurred here. And then we go into the past for about 2 years, and we just see how we got to this point. So we pick up in September 78, and we have 2 marriages that are basically in ruts. We have the Gores and we have the Montgomerys. It is Candy and Pat, who are in a marriage that Pat seems to be fine. He's like, I'm going through the motions. Everything seems to be seen, but he doesn't see his wife anymore. And in that, she tries to seek that elsewhere. She doesn't feel seen by her husband. She doesn't feel any excitement in their love life. She still loves him. You can see moments they have from time to time where she sort of looks at him and she kind of smiles and kind of dorkly. It's like, he's a dork. She knows he's a dork, but she does still care for him and doesn't want to hurt him. That's a big key to this. She does not want to hurt him at all. Alan Gore, on the other hand, is in sort of a similar situation with his relationship where his wife, Betty, is trying to get pregnant. So their sex has become more of a routine or a schedule. There's no more passion in it. It's just like, we got to do this. She has at one point in time cheated on him, but they're still together and trying to work it through. But it's very much like he doesn't feel any passion or any type of, she's burned him out. And he gets a little beat up on the fact that he has to travel so much all the time. So they're both kind of in these relationships that just aren't working. A chance encounter happens where they actually focus on each other. They get bumped into each other at a volleyball game. And for the first time, Candy sort of sets her trap on Alan. She becomes a huntress, if you will. And she puts a little earworm in his ear saying like, hey, I don't know if you ever thought of me like this, but I'm really starting to feel you. So if we can make this happen, that'd be great. In that moment, Alan's kind of like, okay, cool. He was very much the guy like, the dumb guys who the girl's like, I like you. And the guy's like, I didn't even know you. I didn't even know I existed to you. Cool. So she goes talk to her friend, Sherry, played by Krysten Ritter, amazingly, and kind of just dropped the bomb on her. Like, this is how tight-knit they are in this group. It's such a small community, but she's like, yo, I want to bang Betty's husband. And Sherry's like, wait, you want to do what? She's like, yeah, I want something about him. He feels safe. I know I won't fall in love with him. And I won't have to hurt Pat, but I think I want to do this with him. And Sherry's like, okay, this seems like a bad idea. Her pastor, who's about to move off, also tells her this is a bad idea. But eventually, Alan, the earworm has been set for him, and so a lot of guys are very simple. That once you sort of have set that that the trap out, once you've put sort of the cheese out on the mousetrap, he starts smelling it too, and he starts seeing Candy in that way. He's like, "Hey, I'm starting to think about you," and he just approaches her and says, "You know that thing you propositioned me about? How do we go about making that happen?" And then they start having multiple dates where they are trying to figure out the layout of how this affair is going to happen. Seems a bit seems a bit mundane. Now, look, I've never had an affair, nor do I want one. So I guess you do have to kind of be this detail oriented so that you don't get caught up. But it seems like it's more routine. Like they're coming up with like the 10 Commandments of what they can and can't do. Not fall in love with each other. Don't make sure that no one else. You're not sloppy with it. You're being careful. Make sure that your significant other doesn't get hurt by this. Uh, Candy's going to pick at the hotel. She's going to pay for it. She's going to bring dinner, so they don't have to they can do it all once, one stop shop in the hotel. Just planning it all out. Now, what's weird about that is that they are seemingly getting closer while having these conversations. They're starting to find more about each other. That's when he lets her know that, hey, if we do this, I don't want to hurt Betty. I don't want her to get in trouble. I don't want her to hear about this because I don't want her to feel the way that I felt when she cheated on me. And he lets Candy know that I think she cheated on me and let me know about it because she wanted me to feel like me traveling was sort of the fault for it. Which is a dirty, dirty game. But okay. But they continue to have these conversations back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until finally they get to a point where they decide this is going to be the date. This is the day we're going to set it out to do. And they do. They pick a hotel about some ways away from their main location, off the beaten path. She buys the hotel. She pays for the hotel, brings dinner. She's cooking up dinner. She's doing everything like a Stepford wife. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to set everything up. It's going to be a nice little thing I'm setting up and doing all this stuff. And then she goes to the hotel and they first have a conversation, but then it gets a little bit awkward because she brings up Pat. And then at this moment, they're like, hey, why are you talking about Pat at a moment like this? Where it becomes hard because they are so intertwined. Like their kids hang out with each other. The old shit where you eat scenario is very prominent here. And they're just shitting all over the place where they're eating because they're watching kids. And it kind of is what eventually does the incident end at the end of episode 3. But they finally do get their rocks off of each other, and they are amazed with how great it was. They're both saying, "Wow, that was wonderful. You were wonderful." We learned that Alan has never been French kissed, so like the relationship, the sex life that he's had with Betty has been very dry, and Liz and Candy is trying to bring him into her world, but also sort of enjoy that and get something new and exciting for herself. She's never satisfied with what she currently has. She then comes up with the thing. It's like, hey, if we're going to do this, we need to probably take a shower right afterwards so that we don't have each other's smell on each other at the moment. So that she does that. And it's a cool shot. It's one of the coolest shots. I bring it up because she goes in to take a shower. And as she's taking a shower, you see her face. You get the zoom in on her face. It's the face that they use on the poster and everything. But then you flip it, take a little bit of a moment, you pull back out, and it's her in her shirt with blood on her and pouring down. So we flash forward to this incident because she apparently showers after the deed. Wow, so it's a pretty cool pull around and come back together with. Second episode, it's called Encounters, and we just basically see a lot of that. What the title ensues, it's encounters. We see a lot of them going back and forth, and how this builds up and builds up to the point where they start getting feelings for it. It becomes a lot more serious with each other. They start giving looks to each other at places that they shouldn't be. And Betty picks up on it a bit, but she thinks it's about something else. So they're able to sort of keep going with their tryst. They keep going back and forth with their situation and their entanglements. We're going to call that. They're getting into their entanglements and getting a lot closer. It gets weird though because they're so close, Alan starts mentioning that Betty's going to be going into labor. She does get pregnant. She starts like she's going to go into labor soon, so I'm going to have to miss some time or not going to be around as much. And Candy's like, well, hey, if there's anything that I can do, I'll be there. And Alan's like, well, you're a really good friend. I don't I don't think she is. She's banging her friend's husband. There's even a little throwaway line that somewhere has that Candy's like, I'm not being a good friend to Betty. I am I'm not taking care of her or being there for her needs, but I'm handling her husband, like something to that effect. And it's very cold and dry. And Pat and Alan starts feeling a little bit away because he feels guilty about all this. All of this he feels guilty because he does just like Candy still loves his spouse. Um, but he's having fun and this feels new and it feels exciting. It's opening up a person. They both become better versions of themselves in this, but only of themselves. They have not become better versions of their couple or their spouse or made their spouse better. They have been selfishly just considering and thinking about themselves. I feel like all of this could have been avoided had the Love Languages book come out, because that's sort of what's happening. Nobody in their own relationship is having a conversation with each other about what they need, and they found it in the two of them. So they're having all these encounters. They're just banging out all the time. Even when she gives birth, he's still banging out. She's there for the birth. He's there for a little bit, saying, "Hey, we can't do this for a bit," and they're right back at it again. To the point, eventually, when Betty, after having birth, finally gets back into the mood again, she tries one night to kind of get some attention from Alan, and Alan rebuffs it. Alan rebuffs it because he was banging Candy all earlier, and he just doesn't have any more gas in the tank to go at it again. She takes it as he doesn't find her attractive. He's not sexually attracted to her. He doesn't find her. And he's like, that's not the case at all, because he does still love her. And at that point, he starts telling Candy, like, we should probably end this. Like, I can't hurt her or not give her the needs that she wants because I'm fulfilling you. And Candy's like, hold on. You don't get to just stop this. She just gets real defensive and gets really up in arms about it. To the point, she's being naive, because I think their whole goal was to not get attached, but they definitely, in all the encounters, and I think in a lot of the setups of the encounters, they did start learning a lot about each other and became very attached. She's not taking that well. And so we get a timestamp of like July of 1979. And these are important because we start getting to the dates when their tryst starts falling apart or breaking apart. What sucks is that there's a moment when Candy says, I think we should end it. And he's like, she says, I think I'm starting to fall in love with you. And Alan's like, nah, we good. We'll be all right. We good. And then shortly thereafter, Alan's like, yeah, we probably end this because my wife's starting to get butthurt that I'm not giving her the affection and the attention that I need. And I'm wasting that on you. So we should probably cut this out. And he even calls him out saying, like, we've been using what we have to fill in the gaps that we have in our marriage instead of just actually working on our marriage. So then he comes up with the idea, or they come up with the idea, the Gores come up with the idea the timestamp of September of 79, where they're going to go to this thing called a marriage encounter, which is this, feels like a cult, happens in a Ren Fair hotel with like knights and dragons or whatever, but that's where they go. And sort of to work on and reestablish their love and their relationship. And it's about like writing down stuff in a notebook and having the other read it and kind of just get your feelings and emotions out. And in that, the Gores reconnect. Betty and Alan reconnect and get back on the good foot. It's important to note that when they go off to this retreat, they have to leave their kids behind, and their kids are left with, you guessed it, Candy and Pat. So the man that's banging your husband is watching your kids and your baby, your new baby and your oldest kid. Now, man, the oldest kid has always been there anyway. They're close because they go on trick or treating together. That kids are in the same age range, but that makes Candy feel the type of way because she goes up to Sherry and Sherry's like, he's now taking the things that I've taught him in bed, taking it over to her, and I know I'm going to lose him. Like, he's not going to be around here for me anymore in that capacity, and I'm just now watching his kids. She's not wrong. He returns back from this encounter, happy, smiling from ear to ear. But he's kind of ignoring her in that in that capacity. Like the way that he used to look at her is not there. And she knows that she's lost him. She's holding Betty and Alan's baby, and she can just see as they pull up, like, yep, that whatever we had is now gone. The last episode of this trilogy is called Stepping Stone, and we pick up with Alan sort of finalizing the fact that they can never have any more of these encounters again. Look at a time step of October of '79. Alan takes Candy out and kind of is alluding to wanting to end it, but doesn't have the balls to actually say we should stop doing this. And Candy kind of is like, you know what? Here's the deal. I'm going to stop calling you. I'm going to stop interacting with you. I won't be around you anymore like that. And he's like, okay, cool. She's like, well, hold on. You're so quick to dismiss me. At some point in time in this all, you said you didn't want to hurt Betty, but you didn't give a rat's ass about hurting me. She got connected and felt that she might be on the same wavelength as Betty to him. And clearly he's like, no, I do care about you. I do like you, but she always is the top dollar, which is always an amazing thing what happens with people who are in adulterous relationships. There's a woman A or a man A and a man B or a woman B. If you're the side one, you're not going to get the same attention. And at some point in time, you may lose that connection. And it doesn't seem like Candy was completely ready to do that. More so because she's still not getting fulfilled back with Pat at home. So she tries to get Pat back in once Alan has sort of dismissed her. So she calls to do so. She tries to call Alan to get some information about the marriage encounter. And then that Alan lets her know that, hey, Betty has found a lump and she's been going crazy about it. She's found a lump on her breast. She's going crazy about it. Because she is still a friend, she considers herself to be still a friend of Betty. She goes over there and kind of consoles, like, hey, if you need anything, I just heard. And she's like, well, how did you hear? It's like, I heard from Alan. That wasn't the brightest thing to do, because at that point, Betty's kind of like, well, why are you talking to Alan? Like, she doesn't say it in that moment because at that one particular second, she doesn't think anything of it. But later, when Alan walks her to her car, they aren't being flirty with. They aren't being like outright flirty with each other, because it is, for them, it is over. But you can tell the way that, like, Candy is like touching the car and twirling around, basically like two high school lovers who know that they can't be around each other anymore. They're kind of doing it right there. And it's that point, Betty looking through the window sees it, like, wait a minute, the two of them been banging. Like, she just knows it. Now, granted, Betty has some insecurities, some depression, a lot of things. She's on a lot of pills, but her women's intuition says something ain't right with that. So at that point, Candy asks Alan about the marriage encounter, and he's like, yeah, marriage encounter ain't gonna work for everybody. You gotta kind of want it. Candy's like, I don't have a choice. It worked for you, it fixed you guys, maybe it can fix me. So she takes this over to Pat, and Pat kind of poo-poos it at first. He's like, why the hell do we need to go that? It's a cult and all that stuff. But he does eventually decide to go. But he doesn't take it serious. He's writing down lyrics to like Carole King songs as what is from his heart. And it does feel the type of way for Candy. He tries to fix it though. There is a person who cares for her in there. It's just kind of, they've been in such a rut and doing the same thing so long that they sort of have forgotten about seeing each other. But he does say, like, I chose to write those lyrics from that song because I know how much song that means to you, and it's always by your heart, and that's where I want to be. Aww. So it works in a way. It doesn't work as well as it did for the Gores, but this does kind of bring them closer together. And for a while there, they seem to be back on the up and up. Candy's sloppy though. Candy left a love letter that Alan wrote her in her dresser. Now, granted, it wasn't like out in the open. Pat was looking for a letter that he wrote to Candy, and he was looking through all her stuff, and he found that letter, and it kind of broke him. But he didn't check Candy about it. He went to Sherry first, because of the one thing he knows, that if anybody actually knows about this, Sherry would. Sherry's in her salon doing her nails, and she sees Pat walk in and look. She had the look of like, oh shit, he knows. Like, it's one of those ones where, like, you have no other reason to come into the shop to talk to me without Candy being around. And if you're doing so, I know that you're coming in loaded with this. He takes her outside. He says, I got this love letter from Alan. Did you know? And how long has it been going on? She's like, yes, I knew. It's over. It's been over for quite some time. That terminology, it's been over for a while now, has happened a couple of times here. And then, like, a while now means like a month or two for them. But they're trying to, like, be as calm and calming in the situation as they can. She says, it's been over for a while now. Pat says, okay. Don't tell her. that I know. I want to talk to her on my own. Jerry says, okay. Like Amori Povich, turns out that was a lie. Soon as she can, Candy comes home, she kisses her kids, and the phone rings. The phone rings before she can actually have a conversation with Pat, and it's Sherry saying, don't change your disposition. This is a ride or die friend. You want friends like this. She's like, don't change your facial look. Don't change anything about what you're saying right now. But your husband knows. Her husband knows you've been banging Alan. And came to my shop. I told him it's been over for a while, but just so you're aware, he knows. Like with Alan and Betty, the one thing that Candy did not want, is for Pat to find out, because she does still genuinely care about him. He is still the father of his kids. There are moments where she looks down the aisle like, yeah, he's a big dork, but there's moments that make her smile. She just hurt that man. Like, she knows that she's destroyed him. And so they go to bed, and when they go to bed, he brings out a bouquet of flowers and a letter that he wrote. And he said, I failed you. I know I failed you. And he gives you the letters, like, read this letter and then come downstairs if you want. She's just bawling and crying because she knows she's hurt him. But all of this, in a way, has brought them closer together and has rekindled them. And so we then see them now. He's asking her about her short stories. She's asking her about her parables. There seems to be a care about her. While it is a really messed up way to fix things, it sort of has corrected the issues that have occurred in them. And he knows that he could have lost his wife had he not done the work. Betty, to try to suss out and get a little bit more info about this affair that she feels like has happened, she invites Candy and Pat over for a dinner as sort of the chairman of the marriage encounters in this area. She's like, well, you guys have succeeded. We guys succeeded. Let's go ahead and talk about this. But it's her way of sort of, let me see how you guys interact with each other. And they just act like two islands. They never speak to each other. They really don't have a conversation with each other. And it's at that point, Candy realizes, she goes back to Sherry and has a convo and says, like, I don't love him. I don't feel anything for him. It's completely over. It's done. Pat makes me happy. She's good there. On the day of the inciting incident, Candy is watching Betty and Alan's oldest kid. And they're over. She slept over one night. She's wanted to sleep over again because they're planning to see Star Wars that night. She's like, well, if you're going to stay over again, we need to get your swimsuit because I have to drop you off at swim class in the next morning. And save your mom time. She doesn't have to get up early to come do it. She goes over to Betty's place to go get the swimsuit. And Betty is there. And it's like, hey, come on in. I want to talk to you for a bit. She's like, nah, I'm good. I got to get back on the road. I got to keep going. She's like, nah, come on and talk for a bit. And she starts, she's like, all right, cool, I'll sit, but I really got to get going. She's like, cool, really a scorcher out there. It's sort of small talk, right, at first. And then she just lays it on her, like, so you've been banging Alan. And Candy's like, no, I'm not currently. No, I'm not banging him. But you were. And at that point, she's like, yes, I was, but it was over a long time ago. You can see her getting a little watered up for it. And Betty, at that point, you can look in Lily Rabe. Bravo to you, mama. You can see it just snaps. She's in some dissociative state immediately. She is not there anymore. And she just gets up and heads out to the back. Now, if this were a black person, if Candy were black, she would have grabbed her purse and gotten the hell out of Dodge. Because ain't nobody standing around in a house, no matter, like, that kid going to that swim class naked. Because I'm not hanging around here because I don't know what's about to take place. She sits there and she waits. And then the next thing we see Betty come in and have an axe at the side of her foot. And that is how the episode ends. And that's how the first 3 episodes come to a closure. We know the next episode, for those who are not aware, in real time, you can find this all in the news. It's not really spoilers for this, but just see how it happens is Betty ends up on the losing side of this. And it winds up in what looks to be, what is believed to be by the courts, self-defense on Candy's end. So that's going to be the meat of the next episode. These first 3 episodes are a bit of a slog to get through. It doesn't bother me that because there's a lot of repetition. You see a lot of the dates that they do to set up the encounter. You see a lot of the encounters it's a lot of repetition of the exact same scene. I think some of these, once you get to the point of it, you kind of like, all right, we can cut some of this out. We know that this is the case. But I think what really works here for me is the character. It's a character study, and there's some great character beats and character moments in it between Elizabeth Olsen and Jessie Plemons. They're fantastic. I love the ride or die-ness of Krysten Ritter, Sherry. Tom Pelphrey's randomly in this, although he seems currently in these first 3 episodes underused. But I think the big piece of this is basically they've got this one viewed more than a crime story as more of a currently, I don't know how it's going to change, and more of a relationship study to see how if you, not necessarily ending in death or an affair, but I think work on your relationship the best way you can. Sometimes your spouse may not be able to verbalize what's wrong with them or that they don't feel like that type of connection, but these two folks came together because they weren't fulfilled in their own marriage. And in that, all this chaos and just ugliness sort of embodied itself around it. So it's great to watch. It's like I said, it's a slow piece. So if you're not into slow moving, you're not paying attention, this isn't something that you can kind of like, all right, cool, I'm going to pop this on and go do some folding clothes and whatnot. Because each piece sort of adds a little bit layer onto who these people are as characters and who they are as people. I will be curious to watch, and I will be watching Candy, the Jessica Biel one, after I watch all of this, just to see how it compares. It does look like, I'll say this, it does look like the Hulu one does a better job of recreating the physical attributes of Candy, Pat, Alan, all of them. Whereas this one picked the best people who perform that, use that as the template. But we don't always have to look like a one-to-one to who that person is. These characters don't seem to match 100% to the real life counterpart, which is fine. But it's a bit of a choice to say, okay, we're using this as the stepping stone or the piece that will tell the story, but we don't have to be beholden to the looks of everybody there, which doesn't, I don't know the story well enough. I'm old, not old enough to know this. So I don't know the story well enough for that to upset me one way or the other. What did you guys think about the first 3 episodes of Love and Death? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.